If you're a cyberpunk fan, then you've definitely been keeping up with Altered Carbon. If you haven't, you'll want to stream Season 2 before watching this video since there will be spoilers. Put your consciousness into our capable hands because we're going to be going over the second season and talking about all the Easter eggs, hidden movie references, and other moments you may have missed out on the first time around. Let's take a closer look at Altered Carbon.
I know what you dream of.
If you're an Altered Carbon fan, then you've probably noticed that the show is filmed with a distinctive cyberpunk theme. This fictional world is lovingly detailed and helps set the tone of the story, but it was definitely inspired by another fictional universe, and some of the shots look incredibly familiar. It's clear that there was a lot of influence from the 1982 science fiction film Blade Runner. It makes sense considering the movie is set in a dystopian futuristic version of Los Angeles in the distant future of 2019. Hey, what can we say? This is what the future looked like in 1982. Altered Carbon has many similar shots and set pieces when compared with both Blade Runner and its sequel, Blade Runner 2049. Have you ever stopped to consider the episode names in Altered Carbon? If so, you probably noticed that they're all named after classic noir films. This was one of the many trends from the first season that carried on into the second, and if you're up to date on your noir, these names can give clues about what to expect from the episode. For instance, the Season 1 episode, Man with My Face, features Tak Kovacs fighting, well, you can figure that one out. The second episode of the second season is called Payment Deferred, which is also the name of a film from 1932. It tells the story of a deeply in-debt bank clerk who resorts to taking a life for financial gain. Even though his family's money troubles are solved, things just keep getting worse. It's a fitting name for an episode where bounty hunter Trepp is trying to recoup credits from the loss of Axley. There's no doubt that many classic noir films influenced Altered Carbon, but the show also takes inspiration from some more modern sources. It's not hard to see the weaponized fighting styles in Altered Carbon as a tribute to 1999's The Matrix. The battles at the head of the clouds are incredibly similar to the climactic battle in The Matrix. And when Ortega and Ray clones battle it out, it's an awful lot like Neo's fight with Agent Smith in The Matrix Reloaded. Beyond all of the fight sequences, clones play an important role in both franchises. And the concept of sleeving in Altered Carbon is reminiscent of entering The Matrix itself. Suddenly, we're even more excited for the fourth Matrix movie to hit theaters. Some of these cinematic references are quite subtle, but you don't need a film degree to spot this one. Edgar Poe is an artificial intelligence, but he is based off of real-life author Edgar Allan Poe. Actor Chris Connor is even styled to resemble the late great Poe. He's one of the most well-known writers out there, and was known for his innovations in the horror and mystery genres. Altered Carbon's Raven Hotel is named after his iconic poem, The Raven. And just like the real Poe, this AI version has a penchant for gambling, but unfortunately not for winning. Edgar Poe is definitely the most obvious reference to the author of The Telltale Heart, but surprisingly, he's not the only one in the series. Actor James Purefoy is known for his role as the long-lived Lawrence Bancroft on Altered Carbon, but he appears as another powerful, charismatic character in the show The Following. He plays the part of insidious cult leader Joe Carroll, who is also a massive fan of the works of Edgar Allan Poe. He's also a fan of convincing people to commit horrific crimes, but that doesn't mean he doesn't have a soft spot in his heart for fine literature. In Season 1, Poe's last words are, "And neither the angels in heavens above, nor the demons down under the sea can ever dissever my soul from the soul of my beautiful." The phrase missing from this quote is Annabel Lee, which is the Edgar Allan Poe poem he's quoting here. Edgar Allan Poe completed many notable works over the course of his career, but there is something notable about the poem Annabel Lee. As far as we know, this was the last complete poem he managed to finish before his untimely passing. Like many of his other works, it's pretty macabre. It's about a man who falls completely head over heels in love with Annabel Lee at a young age, and those feelings don't go away after she passes away. Some fans believe Annabel Lee was based on Poe's own wife, Virginia Eliza Clem Poe. In Season 2 of Altered Carbon, we were introduced to Annabel Lee, although she started out as Dig 301, which is not the name of an Edgar Allan Poe poem. Dig 301 was supposed to help archaeologists dig up artifacts, but thanks to budget cuts, she found herself out of work. Unsurprisingly, she befriends Poe and is reinvented as Annabel Lee. Let's take a look at another way back throwback from season 1 of Altered Carbon. In the 3rd episode, Prescott visits the police station to invite Maria to a party at the Bancrofts. During an exterior shot of the station, we see a unique looking star with 7 points, which might look familiar to fantasy fans. That's because in the Game of Thrones series, this star is used as the symbol of the 7. It's not quite as creative as what the Whites came up with, but it's still an interesting Easter egg. These two shows might seem unconnected, but Miguel Sapochnik directed the 1st episode of Altered Carbon as well as 4 episodes of Game of Thrones, so despite all of the futuristic elements of the series, there's still a little bit of classic Westeros hidden in there. For our next Altered Carbon crossover, let's go from Westeros to Westworld. These two sci-fi series have totally different vibes, but seem to share a piece of music. In the hotel scene in the 3rd episode, you might have noticed a familiar tune if you were listening closely. The melody is definitely a slowed down version of Reverie, which we heard in Westworld. Not only should your eyes be on the lookout for clues during the show, but you'll want to make sure to listen carefully too. The final episode of Altered Carbon Season 1 was called The Killers, and featured a notable looking piece of weaponry many fans didn't spot the first time around. When Ray and Tak grabbed for swords, one of the weapons looked an awful lot like the one from the Highlander. Did Connor McLeod's sword make it all the way to the Altered Carbon universe? Does this Easter egg indicate that the Highlander and Altered Carbon exist within the same fictional universe? Like most good references, this leaves us with some tantalizing potential crossovers to consider. There might be only one Highlander allowed to exist at a certain time, but thankfully, there are still a few hidden references in the show. The Highlander sword is definitely one of the more difficult to spot elements of Altered Carbon, but this one is a little bit easier if you're up to date on your sci-fi movies. There are many technological elements reminiscent of the film Edge of Tomorrow from 2014. The movie stars Tom Cruise and Emily Blunt and takes place in a distant future where the majority of Europe is invaded by aliens. Even though Major William Cage meets his untimely end, Edge of Tomorrow explores the idea of essentially creating immortality by backing up people's memories. This is an important element of Altered Carbon, and it's one of the many interesting bits of tech in the show. Back to classic science fiction movies, they don't get much more iconic than the original Star Wars trilogy. This scene from the Altered Carbon's episode Rage in Heaven is reminiscent of one of the most notable scenes from the franchise. In the penultimate episode of the 1st season of Altered Carbon, we saw Raylene standing above the cloud and taking on some serious Darth Vader vibes. This part of the episode appears to be a homage to the classic scene in The Empire Strikes Back when Luke Skywalker learns the truth about who his father is and drops down the airshaft.
I am your father.
This means that it may not be a mere coincidence that Head of the Clouds looks an awful lot like Cloud City from the Star Wars franchise. Now the real question is, does this make Emperor Palpatine a meth? Droids are an important component of the Star Wars universe, but they usually aren't the focus of the story. But it seems like the aesthetic of Bay City may have been based off of a popular movie about inorganic creatures. AI, Artificial Intelligence, is a science fiction flick directed by Steven Spielberg. The movie takes place in a world that's been crippled by global warming, and thus, the Earth's landscape and civilizations have changed drastically compared to what we're used to seeing in the real world. It seems like this version of the future may have influenced Bay City in the Altered Carbon universe. Dismal views of the future are pretty common in sci-fi, but these similarities seem to be too much to be a mere coincidence. Artificial intelligence is a big component in Altered Carbon, and so are clones. The way cloning technology functions in this fictional universe is similar to what we've seen in the 2009 movie Moon, directed by Duncan Jones. In this film, a man named Sam Bell works on a futuristic station located on the moon and later discovers a clone of himself before his AI tells him that he's also a clone of the original Sam Bell. Cloning can easily be confusing, but they're often compelling in the world of science fiction. It definitely seems as though Altered Carbon took some hints from Moon about how to utilize the technology properly on screen. There are tons of great movies out there, but let's not forget about the influence video games have had on popular culture, or Altered Carbon. Let's take a look at the Panama Rose Fight Drome, which is a combat arena located in scenic Bay City. This is where combat sleeves fight for the entertainment of the masses, which is a rather morally dubious setup, to be honest. Anyway, while the matches inside the dome may be questionable, the structure itself looks like something straight out of a futuristic version of Borderlands. Come to think of it, Altered Carbon might actually make a good video game in the hands of the right developer. In the 6th episode of Altered Carbon, there's a particularly amusing advertisement that didn't stick around long enough for everyone to appreciate. It's a long vertical sign promoting a Chinese restaurant, and the name is, well, something I can't say on this family-friendly YouTube channel, but we'll let you figure out how to pronounce it yourself. And in the South African language Southern Soto, the phrase translates to, "You are a failure." Ouch. Was this an intentional Easter egg designed to insult the audience? Or are we just reading too much into this? Frankly, it may just be a little bit of both at this point. When it comes to Altered Carbon, fans have a long glossary of terms they need to learn in order to keep up with what's going on. We all know that meths intend to be the wealthiest members of society who can afford to have multiple bodies and essentially make themselves immortal, but fans often forget where the term comes from, and it's glossed over more in the show than in the book. It's short for Methuselah, an important figure in many major religions who allegedly lived to the ripe old age of 969. Of course, Methuselah probably didn't accomplish this feat using crazy futuristic technology, but he still has a reputation for being ridiculously long-lived. When we first met Lawrence Bancroft, he was 360 years old, which means he had nothing on the original Methuselah. Which one of these Altered Carbon Easter eggs was your favorite? Make sure to fill us in on your pick in the comments section below, and don't forget to click on the subscribe button for more videos from us here at ScreenRant. Thanks for watching, we'll see you again next time.